I took the Mojave shortcut because I was behind on rent and pet sitting gigs don't pay if you show up late. I threw 2 water jugs, a wrench, and a phone charger in my trunk, and my plan was to cut through a back road in California's desert, swap keys with a homeowner, feed the dogs, and sleep on their couch. I was alone, windows cracked, AC half dead, telling myself it was just another dumb drive. I kept checking the time and arguing with myself out loud. Go faster and risk the car, or crawl and lose the gig. I'd already sent the client one of those fake cheerful texts, like my life wasn't a mess and I wasn't counting quarters for gas. The road stopped feeling like a road and started feeling like a dare someone painted black across emptiness. Heat came through the vents, even with the AC on, like the car was breathing hot. My lips dried out. I took tiny sips from one jug and hated myself for it, because rationing matters out there. The horizon wobbled. The shoulder was littered with shredded tires and broken glass that flashed like teeth. No service, no sade, no other cars for long stretches, just scrub and rock and that quiet that makes you hear your own blood. My temp gauge spiked and the car coughed like it hated me. The engine started doing this soft stutter when I pressed the gas, like it was thinking about quitting. I rolled onto the shoulder and killed the engine for 10 seconds, then restarted because you don't rest in that heat. The sun hammered the windshield until it felt like a magnifying glass on my face. I popped the hood and hot air punched me. The smell followed, sweet, burnt, metallic. I stood there like a dumbass staring at hoses I couldn't name, pretending I was troubleshooting instead of panicking. I twisted the coolant reservoir cap a fraction, felt the hiss, and snapped it shut because I like having skin on my face. I thought about dumping my drinking water into the radiator and got mad at myself. Trade dehydration for a maybe fix, brilliant. I circled to the trunk just to move, grabbed the wrench, then realized I didn't even know what I planned to wrench. I checked my phone anyway, like bars were going to appear out of pity. Nothing. I tried dialing anyway and got that instant dead call. Click. I tried the old trick of holding it up, walking a few steps, turning in place. Still nothing. I looked both ways and the blacktop shimmered so hard it looked wet. Then a pickup appeared from the shimmer like it grew out of the road. It slowed, then stopped a little ahead of me, angled so I'd have to walk in the open if I went toward it. A guy got out and walked back slow, hands visible like he'd practiced looking harmless. He asked if I needed help. His voice was casual, almost bored, like this was a normal afternoon. I started to say no on reflex, then the heat rolled over me again and my pride folded. I nodded because I'm not brave, I'm just not dead yet, and because sitting there alone felt like waiting to pass out. He came up to my open hood and immediately something fell off. Not dramatic, just a tight click in my gut. He didn't lean in to look at the engine. He looked past it. He looked at my trunk. Then he looked at me. He smiled like we'd already agreed on something. He asked where I was headed, and I lied fast. Said I was meeting friends, said they were expecting me, said my location was shared, just stacking lies like sandbags. He asked what kind of job had me out here. I said pet sitting, and I watched his eyes brighten for half a second. Like that detail gave him a shape of me. He asked if I was alone. I said no, then corrected myself too fast, then pretended I'd misspoken. He popped my hood wider like it mattered, pointed at the radiator cap like he was giving a lesson, then let his eyes slide back to the trunk again. He told me to sit in his cab so I don't overheat. I shook my head. He repeated it, slower, like I was stupid. I moved so my back was closer to my door, thumb hovering near the lock button like that would save me. I watched his hands. The nails were dirty. The knuckles were scraped. He lifted one wrist, and I saw the inside. Fresh scratches, red and raw, like someone had fought him recently. Not old scars. Fresh. My stomach dropped. I thought about what was in my car, my wallet, my address on the insurance card, the little key tab with my apartment complex name. He stepped closer. I stepped back. He matched me, same distance like a slow dance. I kept scanning the road for another car, any car, and it stayed empty like the desert was holding its breath. I reached into my door pocket and grabbed my tire iron, trying to keep it low behind my thigh. My hand shook so bad it tapped plastic. He noticed anyway. His smile got wider, like the tire iron made it interesting. I told him to back off. One sentence, ugly, no smile. He laughed once, sharp, and lunged. No warning, no threat, just hands on me. He grabbed my shirt and yanked hard enough the collar choked me. His grip felt practiced. He tried to drag me toward his truck like I weighed nothing, boots grinding into the gravel, shoulders squared like he'd done this before. I swung and hit his shoulder with the tire iron. The impact rattled my arms. He grunted but didn't stop. He tightened his fist, pulled harder, and I felt fabric tearing. He angled my body so my face turned away from the road, away from any chance someone might see. I swung the tire iron low and clipped his shin. He flinched for the first time, and that gave me half a step. He hissed, eyes hard, and he didn't look scared. He looked annoyed, like I was being difficult. My brain flashed this stupid, clear thought. My car is behind him with the hood up like a sign that says alone. I did the ugliest thing I've ever done. I yanked my pepper spray and emptied it straight into his eyes. Then I ran to his pickup instead of mine. The spray hit, and he made this choking sound and let go like his hand forgot what it was doing. I didn't wait to see if it worked. I bolted. His driver door was unlocked. His keys were in. That detail fucked me up even while I moved, because it meant he expected a quick switch. I slammed the door, jammed it into gear, and floored it, tires spitting gravel. The truck lurched and bounced onto the road. I almost overcorrected and rolled us. My hands were slick on the wheel. I kept expecting him to appear the window, to grab the bed, to do something impossible. In the mirror, he crawled in the dirt, clawing at his face, mouth open in a silent scream. My car sat behind him with the hood up like bait. For 1/6 I thought about stopping, about grabbing my stuff, about not leaving my car there like a gift. Then I pictured his hands on me again, and I kept driving anyway. I didn't go back. I didn't slow down. I didn't even look at the speed. Then the after panic hit. I just stulen na truck. My own car was sitting out there with my name in it. If he could see through tears and pepper spray, he could walk to my glove box, pull my registration, and know exactly who I was. He could drive my car into town, tell some story about a crazy bitch attacking him, and I'd be the one in cuffs. I kept checking the mirrors for dust plumes, for headlights, for anything. The road stayed empty, and that almost made it worse. The cab smelled like old sweat and hot vinyl and sour trash. There was a brown stain on the passenger seat I refused to stare at. I kept my pepper spray in my fist the whole time like it was a talisman, finger cramped on the trigger even though it was empty. I tried my phone again and again. No bars. I yelled at it like it had ears. I slapped the dashboard once and immediately regretted it because the sound felt too loud in that sealed heat. Miles passed in a numb blur. My mouth felt glued shut. My throat hurt. My hand started shaking so bad the wheel trembled. I forced my wrist tight against it like I could pin the shaking down. I kept telling myself not to cry because if I started, I might not stop. I kept telling myself not to crash because crashing meant stopping. I kept seeing my own car in my head, hood up, doors closed like a little stage he'd built. When the first little flicker of service finally appeared, it was so small I thought I imagined it. One bar, then two. My phone buzzed with a delayed notification like it had just woken up. I almost drove off the road looking at it. I didn't call right away. I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't work. My brain latched onto this other fear, that the second I called, someone would tell me to pull over, and the first cop who arrived would see a woman in a stolen truck and decide the story for me. I needed one more mile of distance, one more breath, one more second where my hands listened to my head. I kept practicing what I'd say if I called. Stranded, attacked, stole his truck, left my car, please don't hang up. I didn't call anyone until I hit a tower and my hand stopped shaking enough to hold the phone. I took the cash job because my city contract got cut and private inspection pays fast in California if you don't ask why. I packed a headlamp, gloves, and a cheap body cam, and my plan was to map an old service tunnel under a half-built complex, note hazards, then email photos and leave before security did rounds. I went alone, hard hat on, acting like I belonged. The guy who booked it texted me an address and a message that pissed me off. Don't talk to site guys. Don't check in. Just go where I said. In and out. Cash when you text done. I texted back that I'm not getting jammed up for trespass. He sent a thumbs up and another message. You want the money or not? That was the whole negotiation, him acting like I was the problem. The complex looked normal from the street. Glass, scaffolding, banners with smiling fake tenants. Up close, it was half finished and half dead, like two projects stitched together. I parked where the fence was bent back and walked in with a clipboard out like a shield. I kept my head down and slipped between stacks of drywall. Nobody stopped me. It felt like permission. The entrance was a chain door someone had already broken and retied, like they wanted it to look closed from a distance. The chain wasn't even tight. I clipped the weakest link, held it so it wouldn't rattle, and slipped inside. The air changed immediately. Damp, stale, chemical. My boots crunched on broken glass and something softer. I told myself it was trash and kept my eyes forward because my brain was already trying to protect itself. A few steps in, my headlamp hit a neat line of shoes. Different sizes. Cleaned. Placed like a display along the wall. Kids' sneakers. Work boots. Cheap flats. One pair still had a price tag looped through the lace like someone bought them for a purpose. That simple order messed with me more than a mess would have. My stomach did that hard flip like I'd missed a step. I stopped, listened, heard nothing but distant dripping and the low push of air through pipes. Then I kept walking because turning around felt like admitting I knew exactly what it was and still walked in. I angled the body cam down and moved past the shoes, telling myself I was collecting evidence, telling myself I'd call in from the car. Then I noticed scuff marks on the floor, dragged arcs like something heavy got pulled. My light caught a dark smear that didn't shine like water. I stepped around it without thinking. The tunnel widened into a room with tarps hung like walls. They weren't random drop cloths. They were tied up straight, making lanes. A generator hummed low and steady. I saw a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, empty jugs, and a bucket that reeked of bleach. There was a stack of paper towels, a half-open box of trash bags, a box cutter, and a bundle of thick zip ties on the chair like someone laid them out for later. Somebody built a kit down there. My light slid farther and caught a metal cage bolted to the concrete. Dog cage shape, but heavier. Thick bars, fresh bolts, a padlock that belonged on a gate. The floor under it looked scrubbed clean compared to the rest of the room, like someone worked hard to erase only one spot. I squatted and saw small scratches on the concrete, parallel lines like nails or metal dragged. I stood up too fast and got dizzy. Something shifted behind the tarp. I heard breathing, fast and scared, like someone trying to stay quiet and failing. Then one wet little sound, one sharp inhale like a suppressed sob. My brain tried to do the hero math, call out, rip the tarp, yank the lock, while the rest of me pictured a blade, a needle, a hand over my mouth. I reached for my phone anyway, pure reflex. No service. Of course. I didn't call out. I didn't announce myself. I lifted my cam, took 2 steps back, and scanned for exits like a rat. I told myself I'd leave, call 911 from the lot, come back with cops. Then I heard a quiet thump behind the tarp like someone shifted weight. And it made me freeze because it meant they could move, which meant they might bolt, which meant the person who set this up might come down hard. A phone light snapped on behind me. Not a headlamp, not a work light, just that sharp rectangle glow. Someone stood in the tunnel I'd come through, blocking it. I heard a lighter flick, then the soft hiss of a cigarette pull. That sound was relaxed. That's what made my skin crawl. Whoever it was didn't rush, didn't bark orders, didn't even clear their throat. They just owned the space like I was the one trespassing. My mouth opened and nothing came out. I didn't even get a hey. My throat locked. I took 1 step back and my boot bumped the chair. The zip ties slid a little and the sound felt huge. The phone light tilted, tracking me calm. I panicked and ran deeper, boots slapping wet concrete, shoulder clipping tarp edges. I hit a dead end, collapsed rebar and packed dirt, like a cave-in nobody bothered to clear. I spun around hard enough to get dizzy and force myself to stop moving. Running turns you into prey. I dropped my bag, opened my hands, tried to look small, harmless, stupid. I yanked my body cam off and threw it behind the rubble, not even thinking, just needing one less thing that could identify me. The phone light drifted closer, slow. My headlamp beam caught the figure for a second. Hooded shape, shoulders loose, phone held low. Still no face. They didn't step into my space. They walked past me like I was furniture and reached for a door I hadn't noticed in the tarp maze. Metal clanked. A key turned. Then the final click of a lock seating. Not hurried. Not angry. Practical. After that, footsteps receded and the phone light faded away. I stood there in the dark with the generator hum and that breathing behind the tarps, and I understood the point of the place. It was built to make you choose. Help or survival. Go toward the breathing and you become part of it. Try the locked door and you waste time where someone can come back and finish the job. I tried the door anyway. I yanked until my shoulder burned. The lock didn't give. I slammed it once, felt metal shudder, then stopped because the sound felt like a flare. I muttered, "Fuck," and swallowed it because sound felt dangerous down there. The breathing behind the tarp hitched, louder for a second, and I hated myself because my first reaction was to back away from it. I forced my light up, searching the ceiling and corners for anything that looked like utility access. I found a vertical ladder in a narrow maintenance shaft half hidden by a tarp edge, like someone didn't want it obvious. I climbed fast, gloves slipping on damp rungs, heart thudding so hard it blurred my vision. At the top, a hatch stuck. I shoved until it scraped open and dumped me into a tight service corridor packed with cables and sharp sheet metal. I crawled, shoulders scraping, hard hat snagging. A bracket tore my glove and a jagged edge sliced the back of my hand. Warm blood ran into my wrist and made my grip slick. I didn't stop. I kept moving until I found another hatch that popped into a stairwell that smelled like fresh paint and dust. I came out into the structure and walked fast to my car. Try not to sprint because sprinting makes you noticeable. My hand shook so bad I dropped my keys. Twice. When I finally got in, I locked the doors and sat there gulping air like I'd been underwater. I called 911 from the lot, words tripping over each other. The dispatcher kept asking if I'd actually seen anyone hurt. I said I heard them like right there behind tarps, breathing like they were terrified. She asked if it could be an encampment. I said no, that it sounded like a person locked up, and she kept trying to steer me into maybe they just don't want to be found. That made me snap. I told her to send someone anyway. I don't care if it's a welfare check. Just send a car because this wasn't some fucking tent city problem. Then I remember the cam. I'd thrown it. If I left it, they'd have it. Evidence becomes leverage when it's in the wrong hands. So I went back like an idiot, crept to the rubble, dug it out, and fled again without looking toward the tarps. I didn't go near the cage. I didn't go near the breathing. I just grabbed plastic and ran, and the whole time, I waited for a hand to close on my ankle. At home, I rinsed my hand in the sink and watched the water turn pink. Then I plugged the card into my laptop with my heart still racing. The file list loaded. There were clips from earlier in the day. There was me at the fence. There was me walking in. It had jumped straight to me in my car, breathing like a broken machine. The tunnel footage wasn't corrupted. It wasn't glitched. It just wasn't there. No gap file. No hidden folder. Nothing to recover. Like someone reached into the camera and scooped out the part that mattered. I crawled out through a maintenance shaft I shouldn't have fit through. I left with my hands bleeding and my throat raw from holding in sound. When I got home, the video file on my cam was gone. Not corrupted. Gone. Like somebody knew exactly what to erase. I took the overnight security desk in downtown California because it's quiet work and I needed health insurance more than pride. I packed a charger, a flashlight, and my lunch, and my plan was to watch cameras, do hourly rounds, and keep homeless folks from sleeping in the lobby until the morning crew arrived. I was alone in a building full of glass and rich people who think they're untouchable. At 2-something a.m., the floor jerked sideways. Not a gentle shake, an angry punch. Monitors rattled. Ceiling tiles spit dust. The building groaned like it had joints. I ducked under the desk, counted breaths, waited for it to stop. It didn't stop clean. It paused, then hit again, harder. Sprinkler pipes popped somewhere above, and rain started inside the lobby. Cold water dumping on a marble like the building was bleeding. Not a flood, just enough to turn everything slick and loud. The fire alarm stuttered, then died. Emergency lights flickered. My radio hissed. In the camera feed, I saw a stairwell door open on a floor that should have been empty. A man stepped out with a backpack and moved straight for the penthouse elevators like he knew the layout better than I did. I didn't have a supervisor on site. The engineer line went dead. 911 didn't even connect at first. I sat there staring at that feed, trying to tell myself it was some tenant cutting through. Then the guy pulled a small crowbar from his pocket as he walked. That killed the last excuse in my head. People don't stroll toward penthouse access during an earthquake with a crowbar unless they're there to take something or hurt somebody. I ran because call police is a joke during a quake. I grabbed my keys, clipped my radio back on out of habit, and took the service corridor instead of the glassy main hall. The building kept shuddering. Pipes clanged. Every light blinked like it was deciding whether to live. My shoes skated on wet marble, and I almost went down twice, catching myself on the wall. I met him in the corridor by the service lift. He didn't act surprised. He raised the crowbar like it was normal to be armed in a disaster. He swung once, aimed for my head. I blocked with my flashlight and felt my wrist scream, like somebody drove a spike through it. The metal-on-metal sound rang in that narrow hall, and my ears went hot. He kept coming, quiet, efficient, not angry, just doing work. He stepped in close, trying to keep me pinned where I couldn't get a full swing. I tried to back up, and my heel slipped. He saw it and chopped the crowbar down again. I caught it wrong, and pain shot up my forearm. My hand went numb, and the flashlight almost dropped. I panicked, not in a cinematic way. My brain dumped every rule and left me with one thought: don't let him crack your skull. I grabbed the only thing near me, the emergency defib case. I ripped it off the wall and slammed it into his face. Plastic cracked. His nose went sideways with a wet crunch. He dropped to one knee, choking, and I didn't stop. I hit him again, more to keep him down than to be tough. He tried to reach for the crowbar. I stomped his hand until the crowbar clattered away. He made a sound like a dog that got stepped on, then started laughing through blood. That laugh was the worst part. Not big, not theatrical, just this wet, busted chuckle like he'd been waiting for me to finally turn ugly too. Another aftershock rolled through and the corridor lights went out. My flashlight beam jumped all over the walls. He shifted like he was going to crawl for the crowbar, and I kicked it farther away under the service lift door. My wrist was swelling fast. Every time I flexed my fingers, it burned. I dragged him into the service lift alcove because I didn't want him in the open if the building moved again. I carry cable ties on my belt for dumb stuff, blocking doors, bundling trash, dealing with drunks who won't leave. I zip-tied his wrist behind him, then his ankles tight enough that he couldn't twist free. He kept coughing and laughing, spitting blood onto the floor. I checked his backpack with one hand and found gloves, tape, more zip ties, and a little tool roll. Clean, organized. I also found a key card sleeve with one of our building fobs in it. The kind residents aren't supposed to loan out. That made my stomach turn because it meant he either stole it from someone upstairs or someone gave it to him. Either way, he wasn't just wandering. I left him there because I had tenants upstairs and dead alarms and no clue what else was broken. I ran back to the lobby, tried 911 again, finally got a voice. I gave the address, said earthquake, said intruder, said armed, said I had him restrained. The operator kept asking if there was fire. I kept saying the alarm died and sprinklers popped, and I didn't know what was burning because everything smelled like dust and hot wiring. People started spilling into the lobby, barefoot, furious, scared, filming. Their phones worked enough for video, of course. One guy tried to shove past my desk toward the elevators. I blocked him, and he jabbed a finger at my chest like he owned me. He kept shouting that security assaulted someone and that he'd have my job, and then he pointed at the deadlights like that was my fault too. Another tenant screamed that she couldn't breathe and demanded I unlock the stairwell to get out, like I was holding her hostage. I kept trying to keep people back from the service corridor because the zip-tied guy was down there and I didn't need a mob deciding to be heroes. A woman slapped my desk, called me a useless fucking guard, and told everyone I probably staged it. I snapped back loud. I didn't even mean to, it just came out. That only fed them. They love a fight when they're scared. Somewhere in that chaos, the building manager called me from his personal number, finally getting through, and the only thing he cared about was liability. He asked if the sprinkler damage was contained like I could hold the ceiling up with my hands. He asked if the intruder was a resident, like that would change the fact he tried to cave my skull in. I told him I had a guy restrained, and he went silent for a second, then said, real tight, that I better have a good reason for touching anyone. When the first cops finally showed, they came in hot, not calm. They saw the broken defib case, the blood trail, my wrists swelling, my boots smeared red, and they looked at me like I was the problem. I led them to the service lift alcove. They found the guy zip-tied, face wrecked, still grinning through blood like it was all part of his plan. One of the officers picked up the crowbar with a glove and set it aside. Another looked at my cable ties like they were evidence against me. I tried to explain fast: camera feed, crowbar swing, self-defense, restraints. They didn't listen like people who want the truth. They listened like people sorting threats. One officer asked if I had any weapons. Another asked why I didn't maintain post. One asked if the suspect lived here. I said I didn't know. I said I was alone. I said the building shook like it wanted to fold. The guy on the floor started talking through his busted nose, slurring words, trying to paint me as some psycho who jumped him. The cops didn't shut him up. They let him talk. They turned back to me and asked why my flashlight had dents, why the defib case was broken, why I didn't have a body cam, why I didn't just retreat. Like retreating is magic when you're trapped in a corridor with a man swinging metal at your head. They walked me back toward the lobby and people cheered and booed at the same time, like it was entertainment. A medic tried to look at my wrist, and an officer told me to keep my hands where he could see them. I stood there shaking, soaked, feeling stupid, and the cuffs came out anyway. The cold metal hit my bad wrist, and I saw white for a second. They sat me on a lobby chair like I was a drunk they'd pulled off the street. One officer stood close enough that I could smell his coffee breath and the sweat under his vest. Another flipped through my incident log like it was a script I'd written. The building manager showed up in a dress shirt in pure panic, saw the broken case and the blood, and immediately started talking about protocol violations and use of force like he was already rehearsing for court. Tenants crowded behind the tape line and shouted their versions at whoever would listen. Half of them blaming me because it felt good to blame someone visible. The whole time, that guy laid down the hall zip-tied, smiling like he'd managed to turn a quake into a weapon and me into the suspect. Later, police finally showed. They looked at my bruised wrist, the broken defib case, the blood on my boots, and the zip-tied guy with the busted face. They didn't thank me. They put me in cuffs first because in California, chaos makes everyone assume the worst. And sometimes they're right.